The sharp scent of disinfectant clung to my skin as I tossed my keys onto the worn kitchen counter. The clock towered over midnight. My back screamed in protest, my hands were chapped and sore, and all I craved was a steaming shower and 6 solid hours of sleep before the relentless cycle began anew. This was precisely the existence my family envisioned for me, a life perpetually teetering on the brink of exhaustion, a never-ending cycle of paycheck-to-paycheck survival as a domestic worker. In their eyes, I was the ultimate disappointment, a failure who'd never amounted to anything substantial. For years, I passively accepted their judgment, playing the role they'd assigned me, the quiet, overlooked, perpetually struggling daughter. What they didn't fathom was that each floor I mopped, each toilet I scrubbed, was a stepping stone in a far grander design, a secret plan beyond their wildest dreams. "Sarah, it's Mom. We're ordering from that exquisite steakhouse for the dinner, so perhaps you should eat beforehand. I know it's probably beyond your current budget." "Sweetheart," message 3. My father's gruff tone cut through the air. "Don't bring one of your peculiar secondhand gifts. Just show up, offer your birthday wishes, and refrain from embarrassing the family." The clandestine entrepreneur who forged an empire from the shadows. I hadn't responded yet, not from hesitation, but because the moment had finally arrived. And it all began 10 years ago, at that same dinner table, where my father would later cruelly dismiss me as a pathetic girl, still cleaning other people's homes. 10 years ago, at 23, I found myself adrift, reeling from a toxic relationship, financially destitute, and utterly lost. I abandoned my college education to care for my grandmother, the woman who practically raised me. No one else in the family offered to help. They were too preoccupied with scaling their glittering corporate ladders, finance, law, marketing, pursuing those respectable careers. After Grandma's passing, I was alone. No savings, no degree, and absolutely no clear path. I accepted the only employment I could find, cleaning houses. Initially, it was a temporary solution, a means to pay the rent. But one day I cleaned for a woman named Eleanor Vance. She possessed an old money grace and kindness, and she perceived something within me that others never had. "You're incredibly sharp," she remarked one day as I streamlined her chaotic filing system in under an hour. "Why squander your intellect on scrubbing floors?" I confessed that I couldn't afford to dream big. She chuckled softly and presented me with a book, The E-Myth Revisited. I devoured it that very night. Then I sought out and read 5 more books on similar topics. Something fundamental shifted within me. I began waking an hour earlier to read. I listened to business podcasts while I worked. I meticulously observed the habits of successful individuals, what they delegated, how they prioritized their time, and the structures they implemented in their lives. Slowly, an idea began to take shape. What if I constructed a business that transcended mere house cleaning? What if I reimagined home services as a premium, highly efficient, technologically advanced enterprise, catering specifically to the very clientele I served? And so, I did. I diligently saved every spare dollar. I slept on a thin mattress on the floor of a shared apartment. I subsisted on rice and eggs for months. After a year of relentless 14-hour workdays, I launched Brilliance Home, an exclusive home management firm offering a comprehensive suite of services, from cleaning to concierge assistance, employing thoroughly vetted professionals, trained in discretion, organization, and the highest standards of luxury. Billionaire housekeeper turned CEO. The parking lot of the upscale Italian restaurant was overflowing when I arrived, pulling in behind a gleaming black Range Rover. I lingered in my vehicle for a moment, my hands resting on the steering wheel, watching the valets dart to and fro in the warm glow of the outdoor string lights. Technically, my presence wasn't mandatory. I could have skipped the dinner altogether and allowed the Sunday morning news broadcast to speak for itself. But a part of me yearned to witness their reactions firsthand. I wanted to etch every smirk and dismissive glance into my memory so that the moment of revelation would be precisely as impactful as intended. And besides, it would mark the final time they would ever regard me as inferior. I exited my modest older sedan, a vehicle I'd retained for appearances. No one would suspect that the driver possessed a collection of luxury vehicles stashed away in a private garage across town. I handed the keys to the valet and entered the restaurant. "Sarah," Jessica's voice chimed, a manufactured sweetness coating her words. She rose to greet me, arms outstretched. "You're on time." I'm astonished. I managed a strained smile. "Happy birthday, Dad." He barely glanced up from the menu. "You look exhausted. Long day of cleaning." And there it was, the pointed remark, the barb he'd been itching to deliver. He didn't even attempt to conceal his smirk. A flush of heat rose in my chest, but I smiled nonetheless. "You could say that." Mom leaned in, patting my hand. "We're just relieved you could make it." We understand your job keeps you quite busy. Busy. That's what she termed, overseeing 3 regional managers and negotiating contracts with luxury developers across 2 continents. But yes, busy. As the waiter approached to take our orders, Jessica launched into another one of her self-congratulatory monologues about her latest presentation to a prospective client. Something about a tech company and influencer marketing. She tossed her hair as if she were in a movie scene. So she said, turning to me, "How's the cleaning business?" I took a sip of my water. "It's expanding." Dad snorted into his glass of whiskey. "Must be nice not having to think. Just clean and go. Simple life." There was a time when that would have shattered me, when I would have retreated to my room and wept into my pillow, questioning my decision to remain silent. But not tonight. Tonight, I simply smiled and nodded. Simple, yes, but remarkably effective. The waiter arrived with wine and appetizers, and the conversation shifted to Olivia's recent promotion at her marketing firm, and Marcus's move to a larger house. I listened patiently as they patted themselves on the back, punctuating their self-congratulation with occasional, pitying glances in my direction. It was almost theatrical. Then Jessica reached into her bag and produced her phone. "Did you guys see what's airing tomorrow on Fortune's Sunday Spotlight?" she announced, scrolling through the newsfeed. "Apparently they're featuring this incredible self-made billionaire. A woman. A former housekeeper, of all things. Can you believe it?" I almost choked on my drink. "What's her name?" I inquired casually. She angled her phone. "Sarah Miller." The table fell silent for a moment. My mother blinked. "Sarah Miller? Wait," Marcus said slowly. "Isn't that same first name? Probably a coincidence," Dad interjected dismissively. Jessica laughed. "Yeah, right. Can you imagine? From mops to millions. I mean, no offense, sis, but you're not exactly fortune material." "No offense taken," I replied with a subtle shrug. You never know who's quietly building their empire. The irony was almost suffocating. They were seated across from the woman they were about to see on national television the following morning. The woman they had dismissed, underestimated, and doubted. And they remained completely unaware. The evening stretched on, punctuated by veiled insults, hollow compliments, and overcooked steak. But I persevered, for tomorrow, everything would change. After we sang happy birthday and posed for photos, I rose to depart. "Leaving already?" Dad asked, cutting into his tiramisu with the edge of his fork. "Early day tomorrow," I responded. "Work never stops." "Still cleaning toilets?" He smirked. I smiled. Something like that. As I approached the exit, Jessica called out, "Hey, bring gloves next time. You could clean my apartment while you're here." I paused, turned slightly, and offered her a smile that conveyed everything and nothing at once. "See you tomorrow," I said. They assumed I meant brunch, but I meant the moment their screens would illuminate with my face, when the world would learn who I truly was, before my own family did, and when the Rolls-Royce parked outside would finally make sense. 58 a.m. The countdown for Fortune's Sunday Spotlight ticked down in the corner of the screen. I had already viewed the final cut of the segment, twice in fact, but this time I wanted to experience it live, not for my own sake, but for theirs. Because I knew precisely what my family was doing at that very moment. Dragging themselves out of bed, brewing coffee, nursing mild hangovers from the previous night's wine, and switching on the news just in time to witness something that would profoundly shake them to their core. The intro music swelled. Today we present the story of a woman who redefined success, built a billion-dollar enterprise from the ground up, and kept it all a secret, even from her own family. Meet Sarah Miller, founder and CEO of Brilliance Home. There it was, my name, my full name, spoken with respect and admiration. I inhaled deeply. On screen, the camera swept across our Manhattan headquarters. Sleek design, glass walls, a logo gleaming like polished gold. Then, a shot of me, walking confidently through the lobby, dressed in a sharp white pantsuit, my heels clicking on the marble floors. My voice played over the footage. People assumed I was just a housekeeper. They had no idea I was building an empire. New York, Los Angeles, Miami, Chicago, London, Paris, Dubai, 7 continents, over 400 employees, valued at $4.2 billion. I could almost visualize their reactions. Dad dropping his coffee mug, Jessica's jaw dropping, Mom gasping audibly, startling their neighbors. I had given no warning, no hint, not a single clue. Then the final scene played, me stepping out of a black Rolls-Royce, sunglasses shielding my eyes. As a reporter asked, "Why keep it a secret for so long?" I turned to the camera and smiled. Because success doesn't require validation, and sometimes, the sweetest aspect of the journey is witnessing those who doubted you realize they never truly knew you at all. Fade to black. "Sarah?" We just saw the news. Is this true? Jessica? Wait. What? This is you? Why didn't you tell us? Marcus, Holly, Sarah, you're on Fortune. How long has this been going on? Dad, we need to talk. Now. I stared at the screen, allowing the messages to accumulate. My coffee had grown cold, but I didn't mind. I walked to the garage, my phone still vibrating in my hand. My actual car, a 2024 Rolls-Royce Cullinan, gleamed under the overhead lights. I slid into the driver's seat and started the engine. They had questions, naturally, but I had answers. And today, they wouldn't hear them via text or in some awkward phone call. They were going to witness them, feel their impact. Because today, I was going to visit the very people who had ridiculed me just hours earlier. This time, arriving in a car they once only dreamt of, adorned in designer clothing, whose names they couldn't even pronounce, and entering not as their family's embarrassment, but as the woman the entire world was suddenly discussing. As I drove through the suburban streets towards my parents' house, I reflected on the years I had spent suppressing the truth. Every family dinner, every condescending comment, every instance where I bit my tongue, rather than revealing the reality. I didn't regret the silence. The anonymity had provided clarity, space to grow, but now it was time to speak with authority. I turned onto their street, the same tree-lined cul-de-sac I had once left behind with a duffel bag and no plan. Children played in front yards, neighbors tended their lawns. I envisioned the ripple effect that would spread once they saw the Rolls-Royce pull up. I parked in front of the house and took a deep breath, stepping out into the sunlight. Mom opened the front door before I reached the steps. She looked pale, stunned, her mascara slightly smudged. "Sarah," she whispered, "is it all true?" I smiled gently and held up my phone, where the Fortune article headline still glowed. "You tell me." The air inside the house felt heavier than usual, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Mom recoiled as I entered the foyer, her eyes scanning me, as if trying to decipher what she was seeing. I could tell she hadn't slept. Her blouse was rumpled, her hair hastily pinned back, and her voice trembled as she asked, "Why didn't you tell us, Sarah?" Before I could answer, Dad emerged from the hallway. His gaze locked onto mine, and for the first time in my life, he seemed uncertain of what to say. "Sarah," he began, "what in the world is going on?" I bypassed them both and proceeded to the living room, my heels clicking on the hardwood floor. I settled onto the same couch where I had once huddled as a teenager, grounded for refusing to change my college major. The same couch where Dad had declared I had squandered my life when I declined a receptionist position at his friend's insurance firm. Now, I was worth more than his entire network of colleagues combined. Mom and Dad followed me in. Dad remained standing, arms crossed, posture rigid. Mom sank into the armchair, as if her legs could no longer support her. Jessica and Marcus arrived 15 minutes later, clearly having read the messages in the family group chat. Jessica appeared flustered, her designer purse swinging from her arm like a prop she no longer knew how to handle. "Sarah," she said breathlessly, "this whole time you've been what? Living a double life?" Marcus sat down across from me, blinking in disbelief. "I googled you, Sarah Miller. It's all real. Your brilliance home." I nodded calmly. "Yes, I am. But you let us think you were struggling," Jessica said. "You let us believe you were broke." "No," I corrected her. "You chose to believe it. I never stated I was broke. I simply didn't correct your assumptions. You drove that beat-up car," Dad snapped. "You wore thrift store clothes. You asked us to go easy on your birthday gifts. What were we supposed to think? Perhaps that I didn't prioritize appearances," I suggested. "That I didn't require validation through labels and luxury to know my self-worth?" Jessica scoffed. "That's rich, coming from someone who just arrived in a Rolls-Royce." I leaned forward. "The car wasn't for me, it was for you. So you'd finally see me. Because let's be honest, if I had shown up in my company attire or mentioned my real estate investments across 3 countries, you wouldn't have believed me." Dad opened his mouth, but for once, no words emerged. "You know what truly hurt?" I said softly, my eyes fixed on him. "It wasn't the assumptions. It was how readily you all accepted the narrative of my failure. How none of you ever inquired about my passions, what I was building. It was easier to mock the housekeeper than to imagine I had dreams worth pursuing." Silence. Then Marcus spoke. "But why keep it a secret? Why not tell us? We're your family." I turned to him slowly. "Remember when Grandma fell ill? I dropped out of school to care for her. You all deemed it irresponsible, claiming I was throwing away my future, but I didn't care. I owed her everything. She believed in me when no one else did, and when she passed, I had nothing. Not one of you offered assistance. Not a place to stay, not even a word of encouragement. Mom flinched, but didn't deny it. So I started working, cleaning houses. One of my clients saw something in me. She gave me a book and a chance. That chance became an idea. The idea became a company. The company became a global brand. I paused, letting the silence linger. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to fight for your approval. I wanted to build something for myself. And now that I have, now that the world knows, I wanted you to see it, not hear about it, see it. Jessica shifted in her seat. I thought you were just trying to find yourself. I found myself a long time ago, I replied. You simply never looked closely enough to notice. Dad finally sat down, appearing strangely diminutive. So what now? You just rub it in our faces. No, Dad, I said, my voice steady. I'm not here to humiliate anyone. I'm here because for once, I want you to truly know who I am. And because tonight, there's a dinner reservation at the Peninsula. Jessica's eyebrows furrowed. The Peninsula exclusive establishment with the 6-month waiting list? I now own it, I stated simply. And I've reserved a private dining room for us. Private chef, full staff, top floor. We're going to sit around a table again, but this time the conversation will be different. Mom looked as if she might cry. We don't deserve this. I smiled softly. Maybe not, but I didn't do all this to punish you. I did it to prove something that success doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers, builds, waits, and then it reveals itself on its own terms. The elevator ride to the top floor of the Peninsula was silent. My family stood around me, visibly uncomfortable in the mirrored lift. Their reflections stared back at them, like versions of themselves they barely recognized. Even Jessica, who usually radiated confidence in social settings, clutched her purse like a security blanket, her eyes darting around the luxurious interior. She hadn't spoken since we arrived. When the elevator doors opened, a private host greeted us with a polite smile. Welcome, Miss Miller. The dining room is prepared. We stepped into the space I had redesigned just 2 months prior, glass walls overlooking the city skyline, a long black marble table gleaming under soft pendant lights, a private string quartet playing softly in the corner. The room exuded elegance, but tonight, it wasn't about wealth, it was about clarity. They needed to see, without a doubt, who I had become. The server gestured for everyone to be seated. As we settled in, my mother leaned toward me. Sarah, this place is breathtaking. I nodded with a calm smile. It's my favorite view in the city. It reminds me of how far I've come. Dad cleared his throat, his gaze sweeping across the room. This is a lot. It's not about showing off, I replied. It's about showing you what you never saw. Jessica's salary, and Sarah's daily passive income. The second column dwarfed the first. A polite footnote at the bottom read, "This is only from 2 of my 8 revenue streams." Her hands trembled as she folded the paper and set it down. That $100,000 opportunity would be worth $25 million today. He looked up at me, his face pale. Sarah, I didn't know it was you. I know, I said. That's why I never took it personally. Mom's envelope contained a list of every time I had asked her and Dad to believe in me, to support an idea, to attend an art gallery opening, to co-sign a small loan for startup capital, all declined. Attached was a photo of my first office space, modest, tiny, and entirely self-funded. Her eyes welled with tears. Dad's envelope was the thinnest, containing a single sheet of paper, a screenshot of the Fortune front page. He stared at it for a long time, his jaw clenched. Then he spoke, his voice lower than usual. I was wrong, he said. I thought I knew everything, but I didn't know my own daughter. I met his gaze. You saw what you wanted to see, Dad. A girl who didn't adhere to your rules. So instead of asking why, you assumed I was lost. He nodded slowly, and for the first time in my adult life, my father seemed genuinely remorseful. Dinner proceeded with an unfamiliar quietude. No boasting, no lectures, just reflection. After dessert, chocolate lava cake with a raspberry coulis, I stood and walked to the large screen behind the table. I want to show you one last thing, I announced. The lights dimmed as a presentation began. Photos from my journey, me cleaning homes, me sleeping on the floor with books stacked around me, the tiny office where brilliance home was born, my first company retreat, my first Fortune cover, my first apartment with central heating. Each image was paired with a headline, some from the press, some from old emails, and texts from my family. You're wasting your life. Maybe try a community college next semester. Sarah needs to get real. Then the final frame appeared. A photo of me at age 23, smiling with my grandmother in our old kitchen. Below it, she believed in me when no one else did. I turned back to them. This wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. I'm not angry anymore. I don't need apologies, but I do need you to stop pretending I was ever less than. No one spoke for a long time. Then my mother stood and walked to me, tears silently streaming down her face. I'm sorry, she whispered, not just for not seeing you, but for not looking in the first place. I hugged her tightly. Thank you. That's all I ever wanted. As the music swelled and the city sparkled behind us, I realized this wasn't just a dinner. It was a reckoning, and perhaps the dawn of something new. A week had passed since the dinner at the peninsula, and the world hadn't stopped talking. Articles were still going viral. My inbox was overflowing with partnership requests, offers to write a memoir, podcast invitations, and investment proposals. I had been named one of Fortune's most influential women of the year, and was booked for a keynote speech at a global technology summit. But the spotlight wasn't what kept me awake at night. It was the stillness, the silence after the storm, the unusual quiet that follows a lifetime of noise, of proving, of chasing something just to demonstrate to others what you could achieve, and then realizing you had already arrived. Fortune interview, live in 20 minutes. I glanced at the clock. Just enough time? What kept you going when everyone, especially your family, seemed to doubt you? I paused, then smiled. You don't need everyone to believe in you, just one person. And sometimes, that one person has to be you. He nodded. And if you could go back and say something to your younger self, in that tiny apartment, cleaning houses, what would you tell her? A lump formed in my throat. I'd tell her that it's okay to feel invisible, that sometimes invisibility is a blessing. It allows you to build without pressure, grow without judgment, and rise without interference. And when you're ready, when the timing is right, you won't need to announce your success. You'll simply arrive, and the world will have no choice but to see you. The interview concluded, and I sat in the quiet once more, letting it all sink in. That afternoon, I drove to the cemetery. I hadn't been in a while. Sunlight filtered through the trees as I stood before my grandmother's grave. I brushed fallen leaves from the headstone and placed fresh lilies in the vase beside it, her favorites. Hi, Grandma, I said softly. You were right about everything. I retrieved the original flyer for Brilliance Home from my purse, the one I had printed 10 years ago at a 24-hour copy shop, trembling with equal measures of doubt and hope. I placed it gently against the stone and whispered, "We made it." That night, back in the penthouse, I hosted a small dinner party, not for investors, not for the press, just friends. People who had believed in me when I had nothing to offer but determination. My first employee, my closest friend from college, Eleanor Vance, the woman who had given me the book and seen a spark in the cleaning lady that others had overlooked. We laughed, shared wine, and talked about the future. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I had anything to prove. Next Sunday is our turn. Family dinner at our place. You don't have to bring anything, just you. And if it's okay, maybe you could tell us more about what you're building. We want to learn. Finally, I smiled. There was no triumphant parade, no explosion of confetti, just quiet understanding, and the slow, steady unraveling of the old story they had written about me. Because I hadn't just changed my life. I had rewritten the narrative, from overlooked housekeeper to self-made mogul, from invisible daughter to undeniable force. And perhaps, just perhaps, the most potent form of retribution is simply becoming everything they said you couldn't be.